I was a devoted Buddhist monk for 15 years when I died for 5 minutes and met Jesus Christ. What he told me will change how you see every religion forever. But what happened to me during those 5 minutes when my heart stopped beating shattered everything I believed about life, death, and the nature of divine truth. Let me take you back to where it all began. I was born in San Francisco to Chinese immigrant parents who practiced traditional Buddhism. From the age of 12, I felt called to a deeper spiritual life. While other kids were playing video games, I was meditating in our local temple, studying ancient texts, and learning about the path to enlightenment. My parents thought I was going through a phase, but this calling only grew stronger as I got older. At 18, I made a decision that shocked my family and friends. I left behind my acceptance to UC Berkeley and instead traveled to Tibet to begin my training as a Buddhist monk. The monastery was nestled high in the Himalayas, surrounded by snow-capped peaks that seemed to touch the heavens themselves. For the next 15 years, this would become my world. Life as a monk was everything I had imagined and more. I woke every morning at 4 a.m. for meditation, followed by hours of study, prayer, and contemplation. I learned to speak fluent Tibetan and Mandarin. I memorized thousands of verses from Buddhist scriptures. I practiced mindfulness until I could maintain perfect awareness for hours at a time. I believed I was on the path to true enlightenment, following in the footsteps of the Buddha himself. The monastery became my sanctuary. I found deep peace in the simplicity of our daily routines. We grew our own food, maintained the temple grounds, and spent countless hours in silent meditation. I felt connected to something greater than myself, something eternal and pure. The other monks became my brothers, and our elderly abbot, Master Tenzin, became like a father to me. He had been practicing Buddhism for over 60 years, and his wisdom seemed endless. Imagine living in a place where silence speaks louder than words, where every breath becomes a prayer and every step becomes meditation. I thought I had found the ultimate path to divine truth. During my years there, I developed what I believed was genuine spiritual insight. I could meditate for 6 hours straight without moving. I practiced compassion until I felt love for all living beings. I studied the nature of suffering and believed I understood how to transcend it through detachment and mindfulness. I was convinced that Buddhism offered the most complete and logical path to spiritual liberation. But here's what I didn't realize. Then I was building a beautiful prison of certainty, a prison that would soon be shattered by love itself. I rarely thought about Christianity during those years. When I did, it was with a mixture of curiosity and gentle dismissal. Christianity seemed too emotional, too focused on sin and guilt, too dependent on faith rather than personal experience. Buddhism felt more rational, more sophisticated, more aligned with what I observed about the nature of reality. I respected Jesus as a teacher, but I saw him as someone who had found enlightenment through principles that Buddhism had already explained more completely. Everything changed on a cold October morning in 2019. I was 33 years old and had just completed a month-long silent retreat. That morning, I was helping to repair the monastery's roof before winter arrived. The Himalayan air was thin at our altitude, and physical work could be challenging, but I felt energetic and focused. I was carrying heavy wooden beams across a section of roof that had been damaged by the previous winter's storms. The monastery was over 400 years old, and some of the supporting structures had begun to weaken with age. I was focused on my work, thinking about a passage I had been studying from the Lotus Sutra, when I heard a cracking sound beneath my feet. Before I could react, the section of roof gave way. I fell 25 feet, landing hard on the stone courtyard below. The impact was devastating. I felt something snap in my back, and pain shot through my entire body like lightning. I tried to call out for help, but I could barely breathe. The wooden beam I had been carrying crashed down beside me, missing my head by inches. Master Tenzin and several other monks rushed to where I was lying. I could see the concern in their eyes, though they maintained their characteristic calm demeanor. Master Tenzin knelt beside me and placed his hand gently on my forehead. He spoke words of comfort in Tibetan, reminding me to breathe deeply and remain present with whatever was happening. The nearest hospital was hours away by dangerous mountain roads. The monks did everything they could to keep me comfortable while they arranged for emergency transport. They elevated my legs, covered me with warm blankets, and took turns staying by my side to monitor my breathing. But I could feel something changing in my body. My vision was becoming cloudy, and the pain was being replaced by a strange numbness that spread from my chest outward. I remember Master Tenzin leaning close to my ear and whispering, "Thomas, remember your training. If you must leave this body, do so with peace and awareness. Trust in the Dharma." His words were meant to comfort me, but I was beginning to realize that I might be dying. This wasn't how I had imagined my death would come. I had always assumed I would die peacefully in meditation, surrounded by the wisdom and serenity I had cultivated over 15 years of monastic life. The helicopter finally arrived as the sun was setting behind the mountain peaks. The medical team worked quickly to stabilize me, but I could hear the urgency in their voices, even though they spoke in English, which many of the monks didn't understand. One of the paramedics, a young woman with kind eyes, kept checking my pulse and looking at her instruments with growing concern. During the flight to the hospital in Kathmandu, something extraordinary began to happen. The pain in my body started to fade, but not in a good way. It was as if I was becoming disconnected from my physical form. I tried to apply the meditation techniques I had learned, trying to remain mindful and present, but I felt myself drifting away from conscious awareness despite my efforts to stay focused. The last thing I remember clearly was arriving at the hospital and being rushed into the emergency room. Doctors and nurses were moving quickly around me, speaking rapidly in English and Nepali. Someone placed an oxygen mask over my face, and I heard the steady beeping of medical monitors. I tried to focus on my breathing, on staying present and aware, but the room was starting to fade around the edges of my vision. Then suddenly, I wasn't in the hospital anymore. I was floating above my body, looking down at the medical team working frantically to save my life. I could see everything with perfect clarity. I watched as they used defibrillators to try to restart my heart. I heard the doctor say, "We're losing him," and saw the nurse check the monitors that showed my vital signs. Flatlining. I was clinically dead for exactly 5 minutes, but I wasn't gone. I was more alive and aware than I had ever been in my physical body. This wasn't the peaceful dissolution into nothingness that Buddhist texts describe. This was consciousness expanding beyond anything I had ever imagined possible. I felt completely peaceful, completely free from pain and fear, yet vibrantly, intensely alive in a way that made my 15 years of meditation seem like mere preparation for this moment. Then I saw the most incredible light approaching from what seemed like an infinite distance. This wasn't the peaceful white light that Buddhist texts describe during the death process. This light pulsed with life, with personality, with love so intense it made the Himalayan sun seem dim by comparison. It was approaching me with purpose, as if it had been waiting for this moment since before time began. As the light grew closer, I began to sense a presence within it that was both familiar and utterly foreign to everything I had experienced in my 15 years of Buddhist practice. My heart, if I still had one, began to race with anticipation mixed with sacred fear. As I looked around, I realized I wasn't in my monastery anymore. The familiar stone walls, the wooden pews, the simple altar where I had prayed for so many years, all of it had vanished. Instead, I found myself standing in a place that defied every conception I had ever formed of the divine realm. But what I was about to witness would shatter everything I thought I knew about the nature of reality itself. The ground beneath my feet felt solid, yet it pulsed with warm energy that traveled through my entire being like liquid love. It wasn't made of stone or earth, but appeared to be composed of crystallized light itself, translucent, radiant, and alive. Each step I took created ripples of golden luminescence that spread outward like waves on a peaceful lake. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with colors that have no names in human language. There were hues between blue and green that sang with harmony, shades of purple that whispered of ancient wisdom, and touches of gold that spoke of pure, unconditional love. The air itself shimmered with particles of light, each one a tiny star carrying the essence of pure joy. If paradise had a color, it would be this indescribable symphony of light. If bliss had a texture, it would be this crystalline ground beneath my feet. Then suddenly I was standing before someone, and my breath caught in my throat. Though I had never seen his face in life, I knew instantly who he was. Jesus stood before me, but he was nothing like the pale, sorrowful figure I had seen depicted in countless paintings and sculptures. His skin glowed with the warmth of every sunset I had ever witnessed. His hair flowed like liquid light, and his eyes, oh, those eyes, they contained the depth of eternity itself. But what struck me most profoundly was his smile. It wasn't the distant, holy expression I had expected. It was the warm, genuine smile of someone greeting their dearest friend after a long absence. "Welcome, my friend," he said, and his voice was like music made of pure love. It resonated not just in my ears, but throughout my entire being, causing every cell in my spiritual body to vibrate with recognition and joy. As I looked into his eyes, I felt something I had never experienced in all my years of religious study and devotion. It wasn't the fear and reverence I had been taught to feel. It wasn't the distant worship I had practiced in my prayers. It was love, pure, unconditional, overwhelming love that crashed over me like the gentlest wave, washing away every fear, every doubt, every moment of pain I had ever carried. "I have something to show you," Jesus said, extending his hand toward me. The moment our hands touched, everything around me changed once again. We were no longer standing in that crystalline realm. Instead, I found myself observing scenes from across the world, across time itself. I watched as a Buddhist monk in Tibet offered his last bowl of rice to a hungry stranger. I saw a Muslim mother in Morocco comforting a Christian child who had lost her parents. I witnessed a Jewish rabbi and an Islamic imam working together to build homes for the homeless. "Do you see?" Jesus asked, his voice filled with infinite tenderness. "Do you understand what you're witnessing?" I watched in wonder as the scenes continued to unfold before me. A Hindu priest blessing a Catholic wedding, an atheist scientist dedicating his life to healing children, motivated by nothing but pure compassion. Indigenous elders sharing sacred wisdom with people of all faiths and backgrounds. "But Lord," I stammered, my voice trembling with confusion, "these people, they don't all believe in you. Some don't believe in God at all. How can they be showing divine love?" Jesus turned to me with that same radiant smile, but now I could see infinite sadness mixed with the joy in his eyes. "My dear brother," he said gently, "this is the truth that your world has forgotten, the truth that religions have hidden behind walls of doctrine and judgment. Love is not contained within the boundaries of any single faith. Love is not owned by any church, mosque, temple, or synagogue." He gestured toward the continuing scenes of compassion and kindness playing out before us. Every act of genuine love, every moment of true compassion, every gesture of selfless service, these are expressions of the divine, regardless of what name is spoken or what prayer is offered. The Muslim who feeds the hungry is channeling divine love. The atheist who comforts the grieving is manifesting divine compassion. The Buddhist who forgives his enemy is embodying divine mercy. In that moment, 15 years of religious certainty collapsed like a house of cards. In that moment, 15 years of religious certainty collapsed like a house of cards. But instead of devastation, I felt liberation. Here was the truth I had been seeking through all those years of meditation and prayer. Love is the force that moves the universe. Not doctrine, not ritual, not religious labels. Love itself. I felt my entire understanding of faith, of religion, of God himself, crumbling and rebuilding in that instant. But the churches teach that only through you can people find salvation, I said, voicing the doctrine I had accepted without question for so many years. Jesus shook his head, and I could see tears of compassion in his divine eyes. The religious leaders have built walls where I intended bridges, he said. They have created divisions where I planted seeds of unity. Love is the force that moves the universe, not religious labels. Love is the language of the soul, not the words written in any single book. The scenes before me shifted, and now I was witnessing moments of religious conflict throughout history. Crusades fought in his name. Wars waged over different interpretations of divine will. Families torn apart by doctrinal differences. Children rejected by their parents for choosing different spiritual paths. "This breaks my heart," Jesus whispered, and I could feel the weight of his divine sorrow. Every war fought in the name of religion. Every relationship severed by religious judgment. Every act of hatred justified by claims of divine will. These are the greatest blasphemies against the true nature of love. Then what is the truth? I asked, feeling like a child seeking guidance from a loving parent. "The truth is beautifully simple," he replied, turning to face me fully. "Consciousness is one. The divine spark that exists in you exists in every human being, regardless of what they believe or how they worship, or even if they worship at all. When you love another person, truly love them without condition or judgment, you are loving me. When you serve someone in need, you are serving me. When you forgive someone who has wronged you, you are expressing my deepest nature." His words were like keys unlocking doors I never knew existed in my soul. This was the revelation that would transform everything. Love is the only religion that matters. Not Buddhist compassion or Christian charity or Islamic mercy, but the universal love that flows through all of them like water through different vessels. The crystalline realm returned around us, but now I could see that every particle of light was connected to every other particle by threads of golden energy. The entire universe pulsed as one living, breathing, loving organism. "Your mission when you return," Jesus continued, "is not to convince people to join your religion or to accept specific doctrines. Your mission is to love without boundaries, to serve without judgment, to forgive without condition, show people that the divine exists not in buildings made of stone, but in hearts made of love." I felt a profound transformation beginning in my spirit. Every prayer I had ever offered, every sermon I had ever preached, every religious rule I had ever followed, it all took on new meaning in the light of this universal truth. "Will I remember all of this when I return?" I asked, suddenly afraid that the overwhelming beauty and truth of this experience would fade like a dream. "Die. Not only will you remember," he assured me, "but you will carry this understanding in your very soul. It will change how you see every person you meet, how you respond to every situation you encounter, how you define your purpose in life." The light around us began to intensify, and I knew my time in this divine realm was coming to an end. "Go back with this message," Jesus said, his final words to me echoing with divine authority and infinite love. "Tell the world that love is the only religion that matters, that consciousness connects all beings, that the divine light shines equally in every heart. And remember, you are never alone in this mission. Every act of love you perform creates ripples of transformation that reach into eternity. As he spoke these words, I felt them being written not just in my memory, but in my very DNA. This wasn't just a message to remember. It was a transformation at the cellular level of my being. Then I was back in my physical body, lying in that hospital bed, gasping for breath as the medical team worked frantically around me, but I was completely transformed. The Buddhist monk named Thomas, who had died 5 minutes earlier, was gone forever. In his place was someone who had seen the ultimate truth of existence, that love transcends every boundary humanity has ever created. The first words I whispered when I could finally speak were not a Buddhist prayer or mantra. They were the truth that had been revealed to me in that divine realm. Love is the force that moves the universe. In the days that followed my recovery, I couldn't return to my old way of thinking or teaching. How could I tell people that only one path led to God when I had been shown that every path motivated by love leads to the divine? How could I emphasize the importance of specific rituals when I had witnessed that genuine compassion was the greatest form of worship? I began sharing this experience with anyone who would listen, not to convert them to a new belief system, but to remind them of the universal truth that already existed within their hearts. Some people embraced this message immediately, feeling relief that their own intuitive understanding of divine love had been validated. Others struggled with it, finding it difficult to release the comfort and certainty of exclusive religious doctrines. But I've learned that transformation happens one heart at a time, one conversation at a time, one act of unconditional love at a time. Every person who moves beyond religious judgment toward universal compassion creates a wave of healing that touches countless others. Today, when I pray, I don't ask for people to find the right religion. Instead, I pray for all beings to discover the love that already exists within them. When I encounter someone from a different faith tradition, I don't see someone who needs to be converted. I see another beautiful expression of the divine consciousness we all share. This experience taught me that heaven is not a place we earn through correct beliefs or perfect behavior. Heaven is a state of consciousness we access. Whenever we choose love over fear, understanding over judgment, unity over separation, and that choice is available to every person, in every moment, regardless of their religious background or spiritual beliefs. The most profound realization I carry with me is this: we are all walking each other home to the same source of love. Whether we call it God, Allah, Buddha, the universe, or simply love itself, we are all seeking the same connection, the same peace, the same understanding of our true nature. What I experienced during those 12 minutes of clinical death wasn't just a vision or a hallucination. It was a glimpse into the fundamental truth of existence, that love is the fabric from which all reality is woven, and every soul is a unique and precious thread in that eternal tapestry. Before I share the final truth that changed everything, for me, I want you to consider this possibility. What if the most important question isn't which religion is right, but how deeply you can love? What if the most meaningful spiritual practice isn't following specific rules, but serving others with genuine compassion? What if the greatest form of worship isn't reciting particular words, but living in a way that honors the divine light? In every person you encounter, Jesus showed me that every act of genuine love, whether it comes from a Buddhist, a Muslim, an atheist, or anyone else, is a prayer. Every moment of true compassion is a connection to the divine. Every gesture of forgiveness is a step closer to understanding what we're really here for. This is what I want you to remember. Love is the force that moves the universe. Not Buddhist compassion alone, not Christian charity alone, not Islamic mercy alone, but the universal love that flows through all of them, like light through a prism, creating beautiful colors while remaining essentially one. Love is the force that moves the universe. It's the truth that connects every heart, the light that shines in every soul, the bridge that spans every division we've created. When you choose love over judgment, understanding over separation, you're not just practicing religion, you're living the very essence of what makes us divine. I want to ask you something, and I hope you'll share your thoughts below. Have you ever witnessed someone from a completely different faith tradition showing you what love really looks like? Have you seen an atheist demonstrate compassion that put religious people to shame? Have you experienced moments where love transcended every boundary you thought existed? Because here's what I've learned. These aren't coincidences. These are glimpses of the universal truth that love is the force that moves the universe, working through anyone willing to let it flow. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear on their own journey toward understanding that we're all walking each other home to the same source of love. Share it below, because every testimony of love crossing boundaries is a reminder that consciousness truly connects us all.